name is Kinsley. I'll be making chicken cacciatore, and the first step is to go to the store for ingredients. cut up off screen. This is the full bowl of peppers after cutting 2 peppers. Alright, next we're cutting up the mushrooms. And then I'll show you the full bowl. Alright, now I will be cutting the celery. First, I'm going to take out the leafy parts of the celery so it doesn't change the flavor. Alright. And then I'm going to cut off the end. Alright. Cut up the rest and then show you guys the rest when I'm done. Alright, next up on the cutting board is the onions. The recipe calls for 1 small onion. However, I'm making this for a family, so I'll be cutting up 2. gonna cut up the rest of the onions, and I'm gonna show you guys at the end. Alright, after getting all the veggies prepped and the chicken prepped, I turn the stove on to medium-high, put olive oil into the pan, and in just a moment I will put the chicken in the pan to heat up and put seasoning onto it. Alright, I have the chicken in the pan, and now I'm going to add the parsley. I'm also going to add the oregano. And then I'm also going to add the thyme. As I wait for this, I also have more meat I have to cook as I'm cooking it in smaller increments since I'm feeding my family. Alright, I'm going to flip them now. And now we wait for that to cook for a little. And then we'll start on the next batch. Alright, they're fully cooked through. And so I'm going to put them onto the plate. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to start the second batch and continue with those steps. Alright, second batch is in and seasoned. And then I'll let this sit for a moment. And then when that's done, I'll put it onto the plate. And then I'll start the sauce with the veggies. Alright, the chicken's about halfway done. I've just been stirring it to make sure it's thoroughly cooked. And as you can see, there's still a few pink spots. But as soon as this is done, I'm going to start on the sauce. And then when the sauce is complete, I will make the veggies into the sauce. Or mix the veggies in the sauce. Alright, now we're adding the veggies, starting with the bell peppers. Alright, and then the mushrooms. The celery. And the onions and garlic. Before adding the seasoning, I'm going to mix it around a little bit. Okay. And now we're adding pepper and salt. And then we're going to add our thyme and parsley. To both are combined in this handful here. And then we're also adding oregano. then we're gonna let it sit on the stove for a minute. Alright, while those are there softening, I'm gonna clean up my area a little bit. Now that the veggies are soft, we're gonna pour a cup of red wine into it, and we're gonna let that sit for 5 minutes before we add the crushed tomatoes. Alright, that's still sitting, and I'm starting up the pasta in just a few moments.
Yep.
Alright, the timer is now up for the 5 minutes, and now we're adding the tomatoes. And this we will let sit for about 10 minutes. And when we're done with this part, making the sauce, we'll be adding the chicken into it, and then we will be done. Alright, the sauce is sitting, and we got the pasta in the pan. In about 8 minutes, both the pasta and the sauce will be done. Alright, both the pasta and the sauce are done. Now I'm going to stir this. And then I'm going to add a few pieces of the chicken into the sauce. Alright, and this is the final meal with the sauce and the chicken. And then I'm going to plate a plate for you. Got the pasta on the plate, and now the chicken and the sauce. Alright, and this is the final product.